how deep, how wide, how broad should a citizen's knowledge of what his or her government does, how should it be? What is the boundary of open governance? Where does it stop? For example, in some African countries, we currently have a surge of investigative journalists.
Okay.
Young, vibrant, passionate investigative journalists that will bring up top security files of their nations. Because recently in Nigeria, for example, there was a security file that was leaked by young, passionate investigative journalists, which I love, who I love. And the government is saying, oh, that is a threat to the sovereignty of the country. However, the file that was leaked was to stop the government from invading another nation state in Africa.
Okay.
He, in his very, very passionate way of defending his country or his countrymen, is saying that if the country goes to war with this neighboring country, the impact on African kings would be huge.
Yep.
And so it got leaked. And it raised this question as to where does it stop? Where does your obligation as a citizen, as an investigative journalist, operating within the ambit of open governance, where does it stop? How much should you know?
Yeah. So we go back to the origins of open government, in which those within government that controlled information would think, well, there's very little. If you have open government, you can't have effective government, because if everyone knows what you're doing and what's going on, you can't effectively have government. Government relies on confidentiality and secrecy in order to operate effectively. And that slowly over time, there was enough of a generation of pushing against that to say, no, we can turn data open to people. There's certain data that people should know. They should know. And it started, a lot of it came from the American example, because in the American example, there is essentially a privilege of information being publicly shared unless there's a case for making it not shareable. Whereas in the Canadian setting and other Westminster traditions, it's a tradition of saying government information is government held until there's a case for saying it should be open. So I think the Americans have really, the reason they're at the forefront of this is because of that tradition of government information is really public information from the start. But you're right, at what point can you have effective government unless you have some secrecy? So we still have things that are protected from open government release. There are things that are protected under things like cabinet confidentiality. There's always a line as to whether we're too secretive, too selective about keeping things protected or not opening them up. But generally, there's general acceptance that we should be opening up on things like websites and using the facility of the internet to share data with people so that they're aware of things that are being done by their government. My question always becomes, is anyone doing anything with that? Now, you reference these young, passionate journalists who are finding that information and making sense of it, writing about it so that it's understandable to people. I think that's what's necessary, because just putting data on a website, most people don't have either the time, inclination, or capacity to make much sense of that. If you put a spreadsheet full of budget numbers on a website, you can hide so much in there because no one has any idea how to